Okay, we're back in session. The first thing on our agenda today is we're going to step away from the working budgets for a bit to go through the local government's distribution bill. And I think we're waiting for somebody. Don, or anybody, we've had the bill's kind of been presented, but anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Taylor DuPont will walk you through the formula at a very high level.
Okay.
And the governor's recommendation for $110 million to be distributed to cities, towns, and counties for the upcoming biennium.
You ready, Taylor?
Yes, sir. For the record, Taylor DuPont, LSO Budget Fiscal.
Little closer, you got a soft voice.
Taylor DuPont, LSO Budget Fiscal. I'll be walking through 24 LSO-0448 version 0.2, local government distributions. At a real high level, this bill distributes $110 million according to Madden-Bebout formula to cities, towns, and counties throughout the state. It's essentially the same formula that was used in the last biennium for the standard $105 million distribution. The only difference this year is that amount was increased to $110 million. I'm happy to walk through any or all of the details of the formula if the committee wants me to. Otherwise, that's about the bill.
So just from a high level, I just walked through the bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. What the bill does is it takes that money, sets it into a pot for cities and towns and a pot for counties. That occurs in section 1A, Romanets 1 through 4. And that comes out to be about 70 million for cities and towns across the biennium. That's split about 35.7 million in each fiscal year. And then for counties, 38.6 million for the biennium, about 19.3 million per fiscal year. All right. B, now on page 3 of the bill, all the way through page 7, and I'll go through it, but through 7 just constructs a share for each city and town that represents how much that city or town will get of the funds set aside for cities and towns. Essentially what that share is constructed to do is so that cities and towns that earn less of their own revenue per capita get a larger cut of the distribution per person per capita. So that carries you through page 7 of the bill.
So you have a component part where everyone gets something, and then you have a needs-based essentially component to it. Is that fair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It starts off with a flat distribution to towns of $35,000 for cities and towns that have a population over 35, 15,000 for cities and towns with a population under 55. And then the remainder of that is distributed based essentially on per person need, where cities and towns with lower per capita revenue get a larger per capita share of the distribution. I can take any questions about any of the details of that. Otherwise, I'll move on to page 7, Romanet 2 there on line 14 is the start of the hardship or revenue challenged distributions for cities and towns. So what this one does is for the amount that was specifically set aside for revenue challenged cities and towns, it distributes that funds by taking the lowest quartile of cities and towns as far as how much sales tax they collected in the last fiscal year and how much of the distribution they've already received. The lowest 25 municipalities then receive a share of the 1.8 million per fiscal year set aside for revenue challenged cities and towns. So constructing that share starts on page 7, line 14 there at Romanet 2 and continues on through page 9 through the end of line 13.
Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
All right, so starting on page 9, line 15, is now addressing the counties. So similar to municipalities, the share for counties, well, let me back up here. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So beginning on page 10, line 5, it calculates a revenue challenge county distribution, which takes the counties whose assessed value their assessed value per mill of $300,000 or less. Those counties get a subsidy of 3 times the amount it would take to bring them up to $300,000 per mill based on their assessed valuations. And then the remainder is distributed to counties according to a similar formula as cities and towns that weighs counties that have less sales tax and property tax per capita get a larger share per capita of the county distribution. And that takes you through page essentially to pretty much the end of the bill, Mr. Chairman, page 14, line 3. I can take any questions about details of that. Otherwise, I'll move on to the.
So Taylor, typically, at least during the session, we have a handout that just has a breakdown of what. Yeah, I thought I saw it, but at any rate, I don't need it right now, but I just want to make sure that we'll have it for when we need it. Looks like Elizabeth is passing it on. Okay, any questions for Taylor on the bill itself as drafted? Go ahead, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but could you help me understand more about the purpose of calculating the inverse?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, when you calculate the inverse, it takes it so that a city, town, or county with a larger sales or use tax then has a smaller share. When you take that inverse, it just makes a large number into a small number, essentially.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, this is like reading one of your favorite books again, because you just have visions of Representative Chairman Madden getting up there with these charts and talking about inverse and calculating the normalized per capita sales. We were really lucky. We were really lucky to have a man of his magnitude and understanding of this stuff to put this together. Just thank you for the indulgence.
So, committee, what's your pleasure? Good. And moved and seconded. Discussion on the bill. Any public comment on the bill? Very briefly, if any. We're going to time you. You got 2 minutes. Because we've already been through this almost to ad nauseum.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll take the hint. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Appreciate your consideration of this important legislation. And I also want to start by thanking you for the investment that you've made over the course of the past couple of years through direct distribution. Last biennium was the first time that we've seen that increase over the 105 for a bit of time. I'm not going to get into the formula, but I would just suggest there's always a conversation about standard versus some other deviation. For the 105, it's our preference that we keep the standard formula. Mike Madden was a good man and came up with something that works for my members. We are interested in a conversation about something above 105 or 110. Based on a number of factors, and that doesn't need to happen today. We know that a lot of that will happen through the session. And I would just say if that happens, we're not opposed to something that supports the hardship counties out there a little bit more. And just for your indulgence there, the hardship counties in Wyoming right now are Bighorn, Crook, Goshen, Hot Springs, Niobrara, Platte, Washakie, and Weston. I'll just point to Washakie County and the importance of this program. Between direct distribution and the payment in lieu of taxes program at the federal level, that's 25% of their entire budget. So this is critical to their ability to provide services. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Jeremiah? Okay, next, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Kelly Crickhill, Mayor Valman, I'm here on behalf of the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and I'll just add on a little bit of what he said. Anything over the 110, the last couple of years, the state's been good, and we'd appreciate anything over that. As far as the distribution formula, as far as municipalities go, you'll never have 100% of us agree, because somebody always wins, somebody always loses. So whatever you can do and be greatly appreciated, and thank you. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Any questions? All right, go ahead. Thanks. All right, appreciate it. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Now, is there a motion on the bill? Moved and seconded. Discussion. So in terms of the amount, we do that, it's not in the bill itself. It is, and it's at the 110 as drafted, right? Okay. So are there any amendments or discussion on the bill as currently drafted? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think the approach from this committee this year as we look at reconfiguring after the CARES Act and the ARPA dollars and the infusion, and kind of getting back to the traditional funding in the role of state government, county government, municipal government. We've in our bigger agencies, we're trying to bring those back into kind of where we saw them, putting back into standard budget what we had funded with ARPA and CARES. We've done the same last year. We was able to give the municipalities a wonderful boost in this bill, as well as what they were receiving through direct distributions. I think that we ought to true this up as well, and it would be my motion to make the total amount 105 million, which is where we have been pretty consistently.
Good. Moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendment.
I would like to leave it at 110. My small communities, my area really depend on this money coming in, and obviously they've had it increase in previous years that really helped. And I think 110 is a reasonable amount. So I'm on and against the amendment.
Go ahead.
I am also on and against the amendment. Hearing from my community, there is concern that there would be further reductions to services, including life safety and quality of life, to be able to offset this reduction. So I will be a no. Thank you.
Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All those in favor, raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That motion passes. Any other further discussion? Okay, any other amendments? Question on the bill as amended. Roll call.
The motion is on 24 LSO 0448, working draft 0.2 as amended. Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Larson. Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer Dave.
Aye.
Senator Anderson. Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Kinski. Senator Salazar. Madam Co-Chairman. Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion is adopted.
So, House bill okay with everybody? Or just make it a House bill, just to get that process over with. Okay. Let's go back to our budgets. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here, Jeremiah and company. Not right now. Yeah, I believe we're on agency 29. Is that right, Tom? Wyoming Water Development Office, so agency 29. We are back. Page 12. Not quite. Even 60. And some of these are low. Okay, Don?
Mr. Chairman, the first unit for your consideration in O29 is 101 on page 18,
And that's on page
18 of the budget book.
18. Okay. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir. Apologies, sir. The first unit for your consideration in agency 29 is on page 18. It is unit 101.
Okay, so that's the entire agency, basically. One executive request for 85,000, which is TRP. So Gov's rec, any amendments? Seeing none. All those in favor of Gov recs, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion passes. We have a motion to close agency 29. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion passes. See?
Next agency for your consideration is agency 31, the Collection Agency Board. The first unit and only unit for the Collection Agency Board appears on page 14, unit 101, Administration.
Okay. Gov's rec. Everyone ready to, any amendments? On Collection agency, going once, going twice. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to close 31. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next agency for the committee's consideration is agency 37, the Office of State Engineer. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 20, unit 101, Administration.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to, on page 20, to change the funding source of the Gov's rec from general fund back to Water One.
Second. Moving second, discussion. Go ahead. You want to explain?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have a motion at the end of the agency to then true this up. But currently, we pay for these, this particular unit or this portion of this unit with Water One funds. The governor has proposed to use general funds and just swap the amount. And so I just think it's prudent that we leave it in Water One. And then it's our tradition. And so, and it functionally, what it will do is until I make my motion at the end, is it will reduce the amount of projects available to be conducted by the Water One account.
So what I'm wondering is. if
And my
we have-
motion at the end that I can't make, that I'm not going to make just yet, is then to replace a like amount in general funds in the Water One account. So the net will be zero to the profile.
Go ahead.
So then Representative Walters, and what last year's we had this discussion and conversation on having state engineer and border control in Water One, is then it took like 15 million or some odd out from the Water One funds available to do projects. So are you suggesting at some point that that may be as you leave those agencies and stuff still in Water One to make an appropriation then that would compensate for that out of the general fund?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
So, committee, let me just follow up on that. So during the agency reductions back in, I think it was 2019 or 17, I forget which. 17, we took the border control out of general fund and put it on the water account. And we did it because we didn't have the funds. We were just trying to save money in order to just to meet our general budget. So what this motion is, and the further motions, which all total a little over $15 million, is to deny the governor's request that these things go back into the general fund versus the water account. And we fund it, though, all those with general fund dollars and a one-time or biennial appropriation to the water account in order to accommodate when we have excess money to allow that swap to occur. What we're suggesting not to happen is to move it now all the way back in so that if and when, and we know it's just a matter of if and when, we are short on money again, we don't have to have that same conundrum of having to pull the board out of the engineer's office and fund it with general fund dollars. So, and the point of that is water already gets under the cap dollars, which almost no other agency has. So it has a priority higher than anybody else in the food chain of state government. At some point, water projects should be on the level with all other projects so that everything is prioritized and we make the decision on what gets funded, including water projects. And it doesn't have a priority of additional excess dollars merely because they're water projects. I can say that as a practical matter, water is always a priority on the floor of the House and I think in the Senate, and they usually get funded more than anything else. And they have more support when they're on the floor just because of their nature, because they're expensive, and because we're a rural state and we recognize the value of water. But this just levels the playing field by not doing the transfers recommended by the governor. And so this is the first step one of supplementing these dollars with general fund, but not putting them routinely into the general standard budget of the engineer's office.
Mr. Coachman,
Please go ahead.
so the motion was to deny the governor's rec, which would leave it in water. So a no vote puts it back on the general fund.
Correct. And there'll be, what will happen is there'll be a blanket
Or do we want to just do it in the affirmative, move governor's rec, and a no vote
and a no vote on the.
leaves it in
I
the
think
water
that's good.
fund, and a yes vote moves it out onto the general fund?
Mr. Chairman, this is one of those that gets a little tricky because we want to approve the gov's rec on the remainder of the table. We just want to deny this $57,826 in the exception request as he has proposed, which is the funding change. So I don't know if staff has a better recommendation on how to make a cleaner motion, but the motion is simply on the $57,826 that it does not follow the governor's idea and it stays in Water One as currently proposed,
So it's,
or as currently operating, rather, not proposed.
so Don, the easiest way is deny the gov's rec or.
Mr. Chairman, I think the most direct motion or language that effectuates Representative Walter's intent is to decrease the general fund by $57,826 and increase water one by the like amount.
So moved.
Okay, further discussion? So then by doing that, then at the end, we'll fund all of those projects with a one-time appropriation.
Correct. And a no vote puts it back onto the general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Question? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion passes. We're back on 001. As amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration is appears on page 24, unit 102, the Upper Colorado River Basin.
Doves rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Next,
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 30, unit 201, Groundwater Division.
Representative Walters. Oh, Doves rec. All right, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 35, unit 301, Surface Water and Engineering Division.
Doves rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 37, unit 302, Safety of Dams.
Doves rec on safety of dams. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 47, unit 0401, Board of Control.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, I think I'll get this proper this time. I would like to decrease the general fund amount by 15,657,706 and increase the water one account S1 by the same amount.
So this is the same discussion, Representative Walters. You'll make a blanket motion to add dollars back in.
I believe in this motion, Mr. Chairman, I just added the dollars back in by doing the decrease of the general fund and the increase of the water fund in that
So
15.6
that's what it
million.
does. Okay.
I believe I have taken care of it just as we had discussed in a previous motion.
Everyone understand the motion? All those, go ahead, Representative Senator Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. It's gone back and forth. This funding source has gone back and forth for Water One a number of times over the years. Seems that when we're a little more flush in the budget, then the Board of Control goes off and you know, it comes away. And then when things get tough, we put the Board of Control back on Water One. I'm on Select Water, Chairman of Select Water, the Vice Chair of Select Water would tell you they don't like this. They want the Board of Control off. I think this is a good mid-range solution to this because that way we can maybe avoid the back and forth of pulling it on and pulling it off. And as the chairman said, still keep Water One, which is the kind of main line of defense for small water projects, to keep it funded wholly. And so I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. As amended, Unit 302, all those I'm sorry, it's not 302, it's 401. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Don?
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 54, unit 501, Support Services.
Discussion? 504. So this is the new business exception request application, software and ETS, correct?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take a hit at this. I think that we want to make adjustments to this amount on what is ongoing and what is one time. So I'm looking at page 50. Hold on. Yeah. I would like to make a motion that, let's see, I'm not sure if I have my math. That 432,000 is ongoing and the remainder would be one time.
Is there a second? Second for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're trying to clean up something from the table versus and on page 50, we show the 432,000 as ongoing, but maybe it didn't show up that way in the table.
Mr. Chairman, I think the concern you have relates to page 51, but the table is correct. The narrative is wrong, so there's no need for an adjustment.
Very good.
Never mind. Okay, we're going back to Gov's Rec. Yep. Okay, Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration is page 61, unit 601, Board of Professional Engineers and Professional Land Surveyors.
Unit 601, Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 67, unit 701, Interstate Streams.
Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 71, unit 705, Endangered Fish Recovery Program.
Gov's Rec.
And there is a issue with this one.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I believe what we want to do is move, if my notes are right, is move on that table, the 239 million to the general fund. Am I saying that accurately? Or $239, not 230.
Mr. Chairman, if you adopt this recommendation, that 239 is for statewide cost allocation and can just drop off and go away.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing needed.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I would move to decrease the general fund amount by 102,953 and increase the water one amount by a like amount.
We have a second? Moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin.
if you go back to special revenue, then the statewide cost allocation stays. If you move it or keep it in general fund, then you want to remove the statewide cost allocation. Saying it differently, we don't apply statewide cost allocation to general funds, but we do to special revenue.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Hibbert said, then does that apply to what was previously done with the Board of Control?
Mr. Chairman, yes. And we just spent more than 239 here, but yes, that would be the intent, is that if you go special revenue, then statewide cost allocation goes with it.
But that will happen. Yeah, I didn't see. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have been informed for this unit and then for the previous unit, the governor's office on page 75 recommended the $15,428 out of general fund. If the intention is to have this on S1, that acceptance request would also need to be changed. There is another correction on a previous unit as well.
Yeah, so we're not quite there yet, right? So on the amendment, any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Next,
I believe the unit as amended.
as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 75, unit 1150, Special Projects. And there is a similar issue here with the $41. You could either eliminate it entirely or modify the governor's request.
Representative Walters? You had a preference?
Pretty big ask.
I think it's just,
Mr. Chairman, in this situation,
Don, you want to just kind of clarify this for?
Mr. Chairman, the governor's rec is to zero that out, and then the statewide cost allocation 41 remains. So if your intent is to zero this out, take the 41 too.
Representative. Somebody, we got a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to decrease this amount by $41 to zero it.
Moving second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Unit 1150 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Next, Don.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 80, unit 1401 North Platte Settlement.
Judge Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Miss,
Hold on one second.
Mr. Chairman, this item here is a $40,000 request, whether that is effective immediate or not.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, I think what we heard in previous conversation is that that's not necessary and we could remove. So my motion would be to move the 40,000 from effective immediately up just into the general fund.
I'm getting a thumbs up from Kevin. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. As amended, unit 1401. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Okay, next.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 86, unit 1501 Well Drillers Licensing Board.
Judge Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, on page 45, given all of the changes that have been adopted, it appears to us that
We need to include that in.
you might want to reverse the S1 that appears on page 47 in the amount of 90,600.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to capture the full amount in Unit 401 as S1, the water funds, you'll want to move $16,735,426 from general fund to S1.
Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to
So moved.
move that amount, and that amount equals what was taken in general funds in those three areas that we discussed earlier in the agency budget, the 57, the
So that's just clearing up the
5. So
table.
this refunds it in this motion. So I would move to transfer 16 million as stated from general fund to S1.
So now we're transferring general funds to S1 to compensate for the one-time expenditures that, for border control and the costs. Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Now, anything else? As amended, Agency 307?
Mr. Chairman, just as a clarification for me, because I just need it for understanding, on page 45, in the unit we just discussed, you are taking the full amount, that's 16 million as S1. And then on page 70, there is another smaller request for about $15,000 requested by the governor, or recommended by the governor's office as general fund. That, my understanding as well, is supposed to be S1, not general fund.
That is correct.
Thank you kindly.
Okay, as amended, all in favor of Agency 37 budget, say aye. Those opposed, that motion carried. Okay, now we're on to Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund.
The agency is 39 Wildlife Natural Resource Trust.
Go ahead.
The first unit appears on page 11. Unit 201, Encana Oil and Gas.
Gov's Rec on Unit 201. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 14, Administration Mirror, Unit 1001.
Unit 1001, Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 22, Unit 1001, Administration.
Administration, Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next item for your consideration appears on page 28, Unit 2001, Rocky Mountain Power Projects. On this topic, pursuant to the agency testimony, the JAC may wish to continue a new section 300 for the provision of the Rocky Mountain Power account through the 25-26 biennium.
So that would, the section 300 we can deal with the budget. Right? That's just
That's fine.
that's basically a notice.
Just the head. Yep.
So just bring us that when it comes up.
Chairman, I believe that's in section 322. Last year, could we just adopt the same language rather than?
That's fine. Well, does everyone know what we're talking about? So we know.
Mr. Chairman, I do not.
22 of our, that's the problem. We're gonna have to go back and walk through it all.
So there was a requirement, Mr. Chairman. There is a requirement made, and I can't remember the federal agency with Rocky Mountain Power and Development to invest in conservation projects. They elected to do that through the Wildlife Trust Fund. So we set a specific account up for that 7.9 million plus whatever interest that generates. And then we give guidelines in section 322 on how the Wildlife Trust Fund administers it.
Okay, does everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So that amendment to section, or the adoption of 322 is adopted by us when we get to our footnotes. Now back to the, Don, go ahead.
We have a couple more.
Okay,
On the agency here, there was a request by the agency to deposit funds from the income account to the corpus. If you wanted to do that, now would be the time. I just am reminding you, you may not want to do that.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to allow the agency to transfer 2 million from the income account to the corpus.
Moved and seconded, discussion. So this is what, Don, or Kevin,
Is that effective immediate?
is that effective immediate?
To get the best returns?
I mean, why not? But go ahead, Don.
It can be effective. Yes, effective immediate.
Okay, effective immediate. Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so Don, if you could help me recall, because we passed in statute the authority to allow the WWNRT board to make that recommendation, give them the authority to do that. And so what is this action? Does that just complete the process? They've made the recommendation and then we grab it and put it in there? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. There's one more.
There is one more, sir. Back on page 21, apologies, I missed this one. In the table, it shows that it is $4,695,674, but the recommendation on page 20 is for $974, so there's about a $300 difference.
We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to make that correction.
Okay. Well, first of all, we're gonna need to move to reopen unit 101, right? 1001. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Now that motion is just repeated by
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to correct the table on page 20 to indicate the proper numbers, which is 4,695,674. Pardon me?
Sorry, sir, 974 is the Govs rec, 674 is the table, is,
4,695,974 is what the table needs to read.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. As amended, unit 1001,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
if we could go back to page 14.
Wait, we gotta finish this. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Now, motion to close 1001. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion carries. Now.
Mr. Chairman, back on unit 1001 on page 14, had a question of explanation because I get confused when this base budget is, in this case, $11.5 million, but the standard budget is 0, and then we vote to approve 0. And it's getting funded somehow, some other way, I'm sure, but so can someone explain just what's going on in that table on page 14?
Kevin, you got an answer to that? Or Don?
Mr. Chairman, on page 14 to Representative Smith's question, the agency used general funds in prior biennium for WNRT projects. With the deposit into the corpus in last session, you brought them right near the $200 million. There's some matching funds that are left over. And so they are now moving off of general funds, and that's why this unit is zeroed out. There are no longer general funds supporting these projects.
Mr. Chairman, and that's good news, right?
Okay. Anything else on agency 39? Okay, as amended. Agency 239. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Fire prevention, number 41. Or Game and Fish, I'm sorry.
Agency 41, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 14, Unit 101, Administration.
Okay. Govs rec. Are we ready, folks? Go ahead, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that when we made the reclassifications of a position, which is shown on page 17, I'm in 201, we need to go to.
Okay, 101, Govs rec. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 18, Unit 201, Fire Prevention. And I believe there is a technical issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What happened here is when they reclassified the position, they also included an adjustment in the employer health insurance, which would not normally happen in an adjustment. So I would reduce the amount by $112,696.
Second.
Second discussion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to close 201. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Don?
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 24, Unit 0301, Electrical Safety. Very similar to the last.
Mr. Chairman, on page 22, we have a similar thing. I would reduce the employer health benefits shown on the table there by $20,554.
Moving second and all discussion. All those in favor say aye. That motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to close 301, all as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 31, Unit 305, Electrical Fees. And this is the last in a series of 3 issues.
Representative Larson.
What page is that on? Hmm? That's a big number. 27. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it'd be the same thing on this reclassification. I would move to reduce this reclassification health insurer benefits number by $122,781.
All those moving second, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to close 305 as amended.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
but the governor denied this.
Right.
So do we need to make that adjustment?
It's already done.
It's magic.
Motion to
Mr.
close
Chairman.
305. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion
Mr.
carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so our prior motion, because the recommendation was denied on page 29, it means that money didn't make it into the table.
Doesn't do anything.
So but the motion purported to reduce funding by 122,781 from the table. So don't we have to undo the motion we just did? Don't we need to rescind that motion?
Okay, motion to rescind the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Now motion to close 305.
Good one, Clark.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Okay, is that it, Don? One more? Two more. Training and Doves Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit and last one in this agency, it appears on page 38, unit 501, Fire Academy.
Doves Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to approve 401 is amended. All those in favor say one. Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next agency for your consideration is Agency 42, Geological Survey. First unit for your consideration
Go ahead, Don.
appears on page 23, unit 0101, Administration.
Doves Rec on unit 101, administration. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 27, unit 0201, Wyoming Mineral Resources.
Doves Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 31, unit 0301, State Map.
Doves Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Anything else? Agency 42, as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, go
I'd
ahead.
like to move to put $2 million general fund into this agency for the purpose of continued aerial surveying for critical minerals, as we have done in the past, and that language may need perfected.
There's a
slightly.
second, so for discussion.
Second.
Moving second. Okay, so you recall, this is the testimony we had earlier this week, but Tom, you want to go ahead and explain?
Mr. Chairman, we've put money in this similar program in previous years where they fly over the state in quadrants and take fancy pictures to figure out what's under the ground and what's available. And it's proving invaluable to the folks that are in these industries and really kind of startup industries as we mine for and figure out where to mine for rare earth minerals and critical minerals. And so it does have an economic advantage potentially for the state.
Discussion? Go ahead.
Then with that. Division 201, is that where that would land?
So would this be better off as a footnote in the budget?
That's exactly what I was pausing for. And frankly, you've done it both ways. You could either have a footnote on 0101 administration, which is the bulk of their projects, or alternatively, you could create a new unit if you wish. It makes little difference.
Mr. Chairman, my motion would be in 0101 as we have done in the past without creating a new unit.
Does everyone understand the motion?
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just a clarification on the motion. There was some testimony regarding matching funds, and I didn't know if this money would likely serve as a match to other federal funds or other private funds. I was just cloudy on the background.
I think that's high. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's highly potential that there would be some matching dollars that would follow these funds, but it's not a mandate of these funds.
So do we want to add language to match to the maximum extent possible with federal dollars? To direct them to do it? Okay, as amended, adding 2 million to 1001. Kevin, comments?
Mr. Chairman, you could footnote, explore or to the extent possible, match with federal funds and encourage us to do so.
I would consider that a friendly amendment. Yeah. Okay, as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Motion to close 1001. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion passes. Any other issues with geologic survey? If not, all those in favor as amended, say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Don, next.
Next agency for your consideration is Agency 44, the Insurance Department. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 21, Administration, Unit 101.
Job is right. Those direct, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 27, Unit 401, Health Insurance Pool.
Those rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Agency, anything else in 44? Okay, as,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I recall in Agency 44, we did have the issue of vacancy savings having been used, and I think the units as presented are fine. I didn't know if we needed to do anything to say anything about how we prefer that vacancy savings be used or not used. I don't know if, I mean, the tables I think are accurate as they are, so perhaps no action is required, but I just had flagged this as one of our issues.
Any motion? Seeing none. A motion to close Agency 44. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carried.
Members of the committee, the next agency for your consideration is Agency 45, the Department of Transportation. And before proceeding to each individual unit, you might recall from the testimony of the agency, they had used an incorrect computer expense throughout all of their TRP. The total amount of that sums to $35,900. And that would be in an increased spending in the amount of $35,900. We could incorporate a motion if you wanted to fix that and apply it to the appropriate units.
Representative Walters, you have a motion?
Dave, put it on Zwana, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to increase the TRP allowances in each of these units to the ETS value for those functions with a totaling value of about 35,000 as shared by staff.
Everyone understand the motion? All those in favor of that blanket motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. All right, Don?
And Mr. Chairman,
Then we don't have to address each one of those as we flip through the units. Don?
The next unit for your consideration and the first unit is on page 30, Unit 0101, Administration.
We have Gov's right. Any discussion? Any amendments? All those in favor of Gov's right, say aye. Most opposed? That motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 32, Unit 102, Legal Services.
Legal Services, Gov's right. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 34, Unit 103, Internal Review.
Gov's right, 103. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 37, Unit 104, Public Affairs.
Public Affairs, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 40, Unit 401, Support Services.
Support Services, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 44, Unit 402, Driver Services.
Driver Services, Unit 402. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 48, Unit 403, Motor Vehicle Services.
Govs Rec on 408. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 52, Unit 406, Office Services.
406, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 54, Unit 407, Statewide Cost Clearing.
Govs Rec at 407. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 57, Unit 408, Management Services.
Management Services, 408, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 60, Unit 411, Procurement Services.
Unit 411, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 63, Unit 412, Strategic Performance Improvement.
Unit 412, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears
Go ahead.
The laptops weren't $900, they were $1,157, and it should be $35,900.
So that,
Is that in that, that's in that chart on page 50, I think.
yeah, Senator Anderson, we covered that on that blanket motion because every one of their laptops were mislabeled.
Oh,
So we hit all of those. So
All right.
Thank you for
Thank you.
identifying.
Thank you.
I think that's good catch, but all right, go ahead.
I believe the next unit for your consideration appears on page 66, Unit 413, Fuel Tax Administration.
413, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carried.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 79, Unit 501, Highway Patrol.
Highway Patrol, Govs Rex. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 81, Unit 503, Radioactive Waste.
Radioactive waste, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 85, Unit 504, Ports of Entry.
Force of entry, 504, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 88, Unit 601, WildLink.
WildLink, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 90, Unit 603, WildLink Phase 2.
Phase 2, WildLink, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 95, Unit 701, Administration, Aeronautics Administration.
Aeronautics, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 98, Unit 901, Operations Aircraft.
Operations Aircraft, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 101, Unit 1001, Airport Improvements.
Airport Improvements, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your
Mr.
Second, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to slow down the wheels of progress here. Back on page 86 here on WildLink, just so I understand what's happened, on the table in the prior base budget, the agency had used $4.1 million of what looks to be mineral royalty grant funds, and then asked for that again, but the governor requested that as an exception change that the 4.1 million be taken off. so that now mineral royalty grant funds are no longer being used to fund WildLink in this budget is what it looks like to me. And so then the resulting question is, their budget request was 16 million, but essentially it comes down to 12. And do we have any sense for, well, how much money they need? I mean, do they just not need that $4 million? Which if they don't, that's fine. And does it get made up by, do local communities have to end up footing the bill for
Kevin,
it?
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, no, it no longer is made up by local communities. The governor's priority is the local capital construction account. He, by intent, took $4.1 million, which is basically the MRG, out of YDOT's budget. And then that allows, you don't have to do anything on the other side of the fence, but that allows Office of State Lands and Investments to have that 4.1 million for the local government capital construction.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so far so good. I understand that piece of it. So then YDOT has $4 million less for WildLink. Does that fund get made up anywhere, or do they just don't need that $4 million?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the previous line, the $8.6 million worth of general funds that you appropriated last year for WildLink from general funds to pick up the local government share.
But that, yeah, those were one-time dollars that we used to do that.
Mr. Chairman, that is in the standard budget, the $8.6 million is standard.
8.6 is, okay.
Mr. Chairman. I think the conversation last year was that 1 year moving forward at 8.6, or would it biennialize? And I think the conversation was that it was the 8.6 ongoing as at the same amount. Does that sound right, Don?
Mr. Chairman, you could have made the assumption that that 8.6 was going to be biennialized. We did not biennialize it.
Yeah, we had that.
It could have been
discussion
16.
Not to do it.
That's right. We chose not to.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
does that mean going forward, have we established how that's going to look moving forward, or will there be some attempt to say, no, that really was intended to be biennialized?
Mr. Chairman, with this action on this budget, you will have a $8.6 million standard budget. No other actions necessary.
I realize that. I'm just saying after, in the next biennium,
That's what he just.
would they reevaluate that?
Mr. Chairman, this is like any other standard budget now. It would be a general fund standard budget of $8.6 million until you change it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, does that answer your question?
And Mr. Chairman, to beat this horse one more time. So we think the 12 million really is just enough to run it. They don't need 16, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. I just wonder what it means to, only have 12 instead of having 16.
Well, I think in ARPA, we put in 35 million?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Department of Transportation has agreed to the governor's recommendation. This is going to be fine. We had that conversation with them. They agreed to remove the $4.1 million to leverage that in local government CAPCOM.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. That helps. Okay, motion to, anything else in 45? Agency 45? I think we're done.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe you have a few more units.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
The next one for your consideration appears on page 103, Unit 1002, Air Services Enhancement Assistance.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carried.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 105, Unit 1003, Air Services Enhancement Administration.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Anything else? Timeout? Sure. You ready? Okay,
Let's take it.
and all, motion to close agency 45. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. So let's take a short break. I mean, this is fast and furious, so. I know.
Even when you work.
All right, Don?
Members of the committee, the next agency is 48, Department of Health. There are a number of both potential amendments that we're aware of, as well as technical corrections. And to start off this agency, sorry, there is no introductory item, but throughout the discussion of this agency, unfortunately, we will be interjecting from time to time. So, members of the committee, the first unit for your consideration appears on page 72, unit 0101, Director's Office.
Please.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we amend the $356,356 in Unit 101 for IT hardware. Make that one time. The request was ongoing, and that is in their priority number 33 found on page 69.
Did everyone hear that? All? Kevin, you look like you got a question.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the table's correct for that one. I think the narrative was a change.
Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I think that the issue is for someone reading this book a year from now, 2 years from now, there will be some question as to whether this is one time or ongoing.
Right, so as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Anything else in this unit? Seeing none. As amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 78, unit 130, Vital Statistics.
That's correct. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 94, unit 401, HCF Admin.
Please, Mr.
Unit.
Mr. Vice Chair.
As we heard the director give his presentation, we failed in division 400. Are we in 401 or we to 460 yet?
No, we're in 401.
I'll wait till 460. I think that's where the postpartum conversation would go, isn't it? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So unit 401 goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 97, unit 420, Children's Health Insurance Program.
The CHIP program goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on
Mr.
page.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
could we go back to unit 401? And I just want to ask Dawn, did we need to correct that 25,000 general fund and 225,000 federal fund for priority 21 to one time? Or is the table correct?
Motion to reopen unit 401.
Thank
All those in
you.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Go ahead. Reiterate that, please.
So just trying to make sure that we didn't pass something by there, but I had a note there that on object code on priority 21, the wings integration costs on page 85, that the 25,000 general funds, the 225 and federal funds from the Medicaid technology match would be one time. Is that
Yeah, I see that in my notes. Everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Anything else on 401? 401 is amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. So we are back on 420, is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're on page 100 now, unit 431.
431. Medicare Part clawback, is that right?
And Mr. Chairman, I think there is an issue on this one as well, or a,
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So we have the governor's rec. I would move that we change the source of fundings and have this ongoing general fund. That clawback is, you have to do it. We get that every year. And this was what the governor did here, is recommend that we do it with reversions. Those could be one time, they could be going. Historically, we've just funded that ongoing as we needed to. So I would recommend that we change that 9,331,520. Keep it as it is in the book and not as the governor's recommendation.
And so the implications of that are adding an additional 9 million to the overall budget, correct?
So, Mr. Chairman, we have the Medicare Part B clawback, and then we have the dual enrollment, where those that are dual eligible for Medicare, who qualify for Medicaid, you had to pay for their Medicare policy. We get those updates every year, and not much we can do about them. And yes, you're right. But it is cheaper to pay the Medicaid to cover the Part D than to cover their full Medicaid expense.
So the question is, we use reversions typically, and there's lower reversions this year of 25 million, and part of those have already spoken for. Is that also part of that?
There's some truth to that, but this is the more traditional way, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Co-Chair,
Go ahead.
also, I save it to the end, but I'd like to not let them keep 25 to $35 million worth of reversions the way we did I had second thoughts about it. I mean, I had reservations about it when we did it last time. It was 80 or 90.
Using reversions, you mean?
Yeah, I think we just revert the money and then appropriate it. You know, it's just a more honest way of budgeting.
So all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So anything else in unit 431? If not, as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
belabor a point, the previous motion that Representative Larson so carefully explained on page 100, the Medicaid clawback, Medicare Part D clawback. What did the motion actually do? I just apologize. I just got lost.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
so, and I apologize if, when you have somebody that's enrolled in you understand the Part D. So typically, we fund this out of general fund because we know it's ongoing, and all of those that we normally do. What this done is says, well, we'll pay it if we have reversions. And I just think we pay for it, get it in this budget like we need to. We probably would have had reversions, but it's just not the typical way we have taken care of these Medicaid, Medicare true-ups on dual eligibility.
So, Mr. Chairman, the effect of the motion is to have a cleaner accounting of it. Is that right?
Okay, Don?
Sorry for the delay. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Next unit for your consideration appears on page 103, unit 432, dual eligible excluded drugs.
Doug's rec on unit 432. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 106, unit 433, Medicare crossovers.
Doug's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 110, unit 450, Medicare buy-in premiums.
Doug's rec.
Co-Chair,
Please.
again, on page, the same thing as Representative Larson did on the previous motion. The same thing, concern that Representative Larson raised on the previous motion on page 108. He recommends approval, but wants to use reversions for it and so forth. I'd rather we just took it out of the general fund and reverted funds that are going to revert would be my motion.
Is there a second? Hold on one second. And Don?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, you're exactly right that the narrative indicates a desire to use reverted funds, but his ultimate recommendation and the table is 100% general funds. So his narrative says one thing, reversions, but his actions via the.
See, I was a liberal arts major, so I look at the words first and the numbers second. Thank you.
Kevin, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, throughout the budget and the standard budget, we're asking for flexibility for reversions if they become available. The previous one at the 9 million, it was actually a recommendation to use reversions. It's a different issue. So I'll say it again, we want flexibility to be able to use reversions if we need to. But this one is actually just saying fund this.
Okay. Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 112, unit 451, Wyoming Health Insurance Premiums.
Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 116, unit 460, Adult Services.
Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr.
Opposed?
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I apologize for interrupting. This is where, if there was an interest in putting services in, this is where if you were interested in the postpartum discussion, this is where that amendment would go.
Okay, one moment, please. Go ahead. Representative Larson.
Thank you. So you'll recall that when the agency, and thank you, Elizabeth, when the agency presented their budget, there's a question on the postpartum funding that correlated with the postpartum bill passed last year, where in the bill it directed them to include the coverage for postpartum in their standard budget. They just missed it. So we're putting that, my motion is to put 1.9 million general funds, 1.9 million federal funds, as directed by that legislation into unit 460 for the postpartum benefits.
Move the seconded discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Motion as amended, that unit, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 119, unit 461, Children's Services.
That is rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 123, unit 462, Out-of-Home Placements, Children.
That is rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 127, unit 463, Nursing Facility Services.
That is rec. All those in favor say aye. That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 130, unit 464, Hospice.
That is rec. All those in favor say aye. That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 134, unit 470, Optional Services, Adult.
That is right. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 137, unit 471, Indian Health Services.
IHS, that is right. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 140, unit 472, Wyoming Life Resource Center, ICMFMR.
That is right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 144, unit 483, Community Choices Waiver.
Waiver program, unit 485, goes direct. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 149, unit 485, the Comprehensive Waiver.
Please, go ahead.
I would move that we adopt the agency's budget of $967,450 general fund and a like amount of federal funds. You'll recall these are the services. We had this same discussion a few years ago when we made the serious cuts in step one and step two cuts. And we worked to put this one back in because this covers habilitative services for people who are receiving services like speech therapy to deal with their swallowing reflex and other occupational and physical therapy. If this goes away, they can still get services through Medicare, through their Medicare, but only as rehabilitative. So then the person's healthcare has to deteriorate to the point that they can't swallow, then they can get services. Get that restored, then they start getting services, where this is ongoing habilitative services for that population, the DD population. So that's the motion to put that back in.
So Mr. Co-Chair, now I thought the governor had exception requests to restore that. Is this a motion to restore something above and beyond that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinski, just going there on page 148 on this section, it was in there, just like it was when you and I put all of those restorations back in one time. This was part of that, but in this time, he didn't, he denied it. I think my take, revision with the governor's office is he's not, well, I don't want to speak for him, but just trying to make sure there's enough butter to go across the slice of bread, and maybe thought this is one place that he could reduce that. I think it's the wrong place to do it.
Okay, so Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead.
So this motion is with respect to priority 11, step 2 comprehensive waiver restoration, which the governor recommended denial.
Correct.
Well, denial of 966,000 of the total.
And so the motion is,
The motion is
to deny goes right.
Yeah.
okay, so if I vote no, I'm saying I want to maintain that cut.
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
So a vote no is to maintain the 967.
And
Everyone understand?
And Mr. Chairman, for
Please.
Representative Larson, the step 2 cut, how much as a percentage of the program was that? Was that a 2.5% cut? Was a 5% cut, if you recall? I'm just trying to figure out the order of magnitude.
Well, Mr. Chairman, of that program, it was the total of that. So in the
Oh, it was the
step,
whole program?
yes,
Okay.
it was what was allowed in our state Medicaid plan to provide those services and in the comprehensive waiver. And that was offered up as a cut. We reduced, we accepted that, and then we funded that with CARES and ARPA dollars in the previous biennium.
So it has been funded until, say, we funded this, but we used CARES ARPA's dollars and we just cut it into the budget.
Just putting it back in.
Now we're putting it back in. Okay, everyone understand? All those in favor of the motion to deny, right? No, so
Mr.
the
Chairman,
motion is,
it's it's my understanding that the motion is to add
I think
967,450.
that's the motion.
Yeah. You're right.
You want to restate the motion?
So the motion, Mr. Chairman, is to add $967,450 general fund and a like amount of federal funds into Unit 485.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Go back up to the one just before that, which is priority 9. And this is another restoration of a cut it was painful to make it. When we're back in the soup, we'll be back here making the cut again. And he restored, I'm not quite sure what he does, because he said he recommends approval contingent on the final fiscal profile. But I think the budget adds back in $20 million, 10 of federal funds and 10 of general funds. My motion would be to delete both of those add backs of funding.
So take the money away totally.
Take the money. This is an add back on top of what we already do. Doesn't eliminate the program. This is an add back to the program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a second discussion. Please.
So this was indeed a cut, but it's a cut that we continued to fund with one-time dollars, always anticipating that we would put that back in the standard budget. There is still another 2.5% across the board Medicaid cut that that we didn't fund one time and we are not putting back in. This is the one that we were funding one time. We're just putting back in the budget.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just more substance to the denial.
We went through round 1 of cuts, round 2 of cuts, round 3 of cuts. There were predictions of disaster. Sun came up the next day. I think I just want to resist putting all these programs back to where they were, because the next downturn, we'll be down here cutting them all again. I mean, it was tough to get those cuts the first time. I don't want to have to go through it again. I'd like to leave the budget as it is after the step 2 and the step 3 reductions rather than putting them all back.
So my understanding is, and Mr. Meister can correct this, we substituted part of this with ARPA dollars because for one time, because we had money to substitute. We did not cut the program. If we now cut this program, we're going to cut funding for comprehensive by how much percent, which will be, I mean, that'll be a direct impact on all of the providers around the state that we have been funding. So this is an additional cut. Had we not had ARPA, we would not have cut this. I mean, we would have funded it with general fund dollars. So this is, I think you're mixing cuts on.
Mr. Co-Chair, that's your recollection. That's Representative Larson's recollection. It's not mine. Mine was that we cut it and then we said, we'll fill it with ARPA funding. Representative Larson said it was always our intention to restore it. I don't recall having that intention. I want to be as frugal with these health programs as we can.
Okay, further discussion. Please.
Because I wasn't on appropriations when we cut, although I voted on all those cuts as a senator. You know, I just am curious about the decision of if we cut during a catastrophic budget downturn, never to be restored again, or when is an appropriate time to provide inflationary adjustments to these types of services or any type of compensation. I'm just, because this whole budget is going to be about, well, we cut it before, therefore we can't bring it back again in any form. So I just need to know more about that, if I can, from anybody.
So, and furthermore, what we need to know is, I think we're obligated to know, we're cutting 20 million out of the $130 million budget, right? So that's going to be cut in services by how much to the respective providers? I mean, we need to know what the impact of this type of it's fairly significant. And I can say that half of the providers right now in the state are about ready to go under because there's insufficient funding for the comprehensive work. I know both CES in the central part of the state, Magic City here, are running at a significant deficit. To do this, basically, would put a dagger in them and then services they provide. It wouldn't literally do that. So go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can we take a quick 2-minute
Sure,
break?
that's fine. We'll take a short break. Hey, we're back. Don, bring us back to where we were. So we're,
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're on page 149, unit 485, comprehensive waiver. You have adopted the first amendment sponsored by Representative Larson, and that restored the rejection of $1.9 million split 50-50 between general funds and federal funds. There is an amendment on the table sponsored by Senator Kinski, which would reduce 10.2 million, I'm rounding, general funds and 10.2 million in federal funds.
okay. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed? No. That motion fails. So we're back on unit 485. Any further amendments? Seeing none, as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Go ahead, Don.
Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 152, unit 486, supportive service waiver.
Govs Rec 486. Any amendments? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 158, unit 501, Public Health Division Administration.
Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 162, unit 502, Public Health Preparedness.
Public Health and Mourners, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 168, unit 503, Emergency Medical Services and Hospital Preparedness.
Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 173, unit 510, Rural and Frontier Health.
Frontier Health, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 177, unit 522, Immunization.
Unit 522, Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 182, unit 523, Maternal and Child Services.
Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 185, unit 524, Nurse Home Visitation.
Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 189, unit 525, Women, Infants, and Children.
Govs Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 194, unit 526, Public Health Nursing, and I believe there are some.
There is a motion, okay? Go ahead, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, my first amendment would be on the authorized employees to show that the full-time employees, instead of being a -4, would be a -3, and the AWAC position count would be a -1. That trues it up with the narrative that I think that involves Teton County.
Mr. Chairman, for point of clarification, is that a -1 part-time position?
If you tell me it is. It is.
Okay.
I had AWAC, but
So it's a
part-time.
corrected narrative amendment. Right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I would propose that we add $387,468 into Unit 526 to adjust those public nurse salaries for those nurses that are now employed by the counties that have been state employees that we talked about this, that missed that adjustment.
The pay increase.
Second.
In my notes have that Campbell County, Teton County, Laramie County, and Natrona County did not receive the pay increase that the other state employees received, and this is truing up those particular positions. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
Any questions on that motion?
And Mr. Chairman, what was the
Please.
dollar amount again?
387,000, Mr. Chairman, 468, 387,468.
Is that the same number that you have?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the only point of clarification is Campbell County just does not participate in this program. So it is Albany, Natrona, and Laramie that would be affected.
Okay. That's, I don't know why that's in my notes, but, okay, everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, there is one more item for consideration.
Okay.
There is a possible need for a footnote. You do have a bill, 24 LSO 253, I believe. If that is adopted, it is to your discretion if there is an appropriation in that bill, if you want it to be reduced by the amount you just added.
Mr. Chairman, there is no appropriation in that bill, so we're fine. We will just monitor it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, unit 525 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
526.
526, I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 200, unit 531, cancer screening.
That was right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 206, unit 532, public health laboratory.
Public Health Laboratories, Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 211, unit 534, communicable disease.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 214 and 215, unit 538, chronic disease epidemiology and surveillance.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 220, unit 539, injury and chronic disease prevention.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 224, unit 540, infectious disease epidemiology.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 229, unit 550, substance abuse and tobacco prevention. Just as a point of clarification, if you adopt this,
The wind will stop blowing.
no, the governor is recommending 3,846,288 will be effective immediate.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
do we need to make that a motion then? Is it okay? Okay.
We will include it.
It's a Gov's rec, so.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Representative Stiff, you're giving me the shaky.
Did we, Mr. Chairman, did we just vote to make it effective immediate or not? To make it effective?
To make it, yeah.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Sith, these are tobacco trust funds, and the total appropriation is about 7.6. Governor, in his recommendation, makes 3.8 of that effective immediately of the overall budget, if that helps.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 231, unit 585, WIC ARP.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 237, unit 2501, Behavioral Health Administration.
Gov's rec. Please.
While I read my notes. On this amount, so the agency requested for the 227,852 for new positions, the suicide hotline administration in this unit. And it's only shown for 1 year, so we need to biennialize that amount.
We have a motion? Is that the motion? Second.
That is the motion.
Okay. So the motion is to turn the 22,7,852 into a biennial number. Is that correct?
That is.
Mr. Chairman, it'll just be a footnote indicating that in 27-28, this will double.
Okay.
Okay, everyone understand that? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
So, Mr. Chairman, so the I can see Representative Stith's mind. You'll recall that the agency had enough money to fund through the first year of this biennium for the suicide hotline. Then this comes in, takes care of the second year, then we biennialize it.
Okay,
Did I do-
Don, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Unit 2501 as amended.
501 is amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 242, Unit 2502, recovery supports.
Recovery support, that was right. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 245, Unit 2503, court supervised treatment.
That was right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Mr.
opposed?
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
And again, the reason this goes to zero is because we're transferring this to judiciary. Is that right?
Don?
Mr. Chairman, this is another example of the,
Mr. Chairman, this unit was transferred to the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
And so this is because it's for the next biennium. It isn't effective until this, I think, July 1 of this year. And so they just needed to build it into their budget this way to show that they transferred that.
The answer is yes. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carried.
the next unit appears on page 254, Unit 2505, Wyoming State Hospital. And I believe there is an issue.
Go ahead.
Members, if you'd look back on page 349, there's an exception request for 350,000 that's ongoing. My motion is to have that be one time.
There a second? Moving second, discussion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other amendments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
A like manner on the priority 37, the land fund, which is dedicated to the state hospital, that should be one-time funding as well instead of ongoing.
And that is on,
That is on page, it's on the, I'll tell you. It's on page 251 and 250, which is priority 37. They use that fund that's dedicated at the Life Resource Center for them, and the one at State Hospital is generated off revenue from those, from the lands that they own, and they use that to buy equipment.
as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other motions? As amended, Unit 2505, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 262, Unit 2506, outpatient mental health. And I believe there is.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So we talked earlier about texting for the 211 or call, call, and this is getting into the 988 suicide hotline. And it's priority 41 for 958,695. If you look at the request, he has it for 2026. He kind of done this really interesting. He done it in two. He done a priority 41 and a priority 42. Priority 41 is for the 1 year, which is in his budget, and priority 42 would allow that then to go forward in the next year. And so my motion is to take that 958,000 and have it be that amount in each year. Right.
Mr. Chairman, similar to the prior motion, the agency has asked for this in fiscal year 2026 for the $958,695. So we would just need a footnote to double that for the next biennium.
That's my notes. That turns into 1.9 for 27, 28.
That's right.
Right? Okay, everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
As amended.
As amended. 2505, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Actually, 2506, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 266. It's Unit 2507, outpatient substance abuse. And I would note that you have Yes, an effective immediate, but that's note only, no action necessary by the committee.
Okay, got it rec with the note. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so we're voting on the table, and I just had a question about the narrative on page 265 that said general fund and it should say federal funds. Is the table correct, however?
Table's correct.
Okay.
It should say federal funds on page 265.
265.
But no action needs to be taken since we're voting on the table.
Yeah,
And are we on 266, Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we also have another adjustment on that, on the tobacco funds. We need to take 7.5 million of the 9.5 million and make that effective immediately.
That's on the table. So
Okay.
that happens, right?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. It's in the governor's recommendation, so you can expect a footnote, but no action is needed by this committee.
So, Mr. Chairman and Don, if we could, so is it at the table on page 266?
Mr. Chairman, the table actually has the 7.5 million in the base budget as effective immediate, and it did not break it out.
That's where thank you.
Okay. 2507 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next next unit for your consideration appears on page 269. It's unit 2508, residential mental health.
That is correct. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 272, unit 2509, residential substance abuse.
That is correct. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 279, unit 2510, preschool services. I think there are proposed amendments and perhaps technical issues.
Let's do technical first.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the agency testified to remove $670,233 general fund that appears as priority number 35 on page 275 as the child count actually went down.
On that amendment, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So I would like to turn my time. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the governor's rec of 12,290,328, change that to ongoing, and change the source from general fund to school foundation.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Any other amendments to 2510? As amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, there is Senate File 19, 2024 Senate File 19. That does have an appropriation, I believe. And so do you want a footnote on this particular unit to say that it will be reduced dollar for dollar by that appropriation?
Where's this at, please?
Senate File what?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on this one. The Joint Education Committee has a bill that proposes, I think, on the order of $18 million. My memory might not be accurate on that one. And in the event both that bill, which has more than just the appropriation, and this budget pass, which one should control or which one should be reduced?
If, Mr. Chairman, the K-12 ECA should control, and this would be backed up general funds.
I think that's correct.
Very good. I understand that this appropriation that you just moved to SFP shall be reduced dollar for dollar by any appropriation in Senate File 19.
Yes,
That's correct.
well said.
Okay, any questions? I think we've already closed that's just a Clarification. I think we just concur that that's what it means. So, yeah, all those in favor that that's the concept of what we're doing, say aye. Those opposed, that's concept passes. Okay. Don?
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 286, unit 2512, Wyoming Life Resource Center.
That was right.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, there is $746,000 that is one time, so it just needs a footnote.
Same issue as at the state hospital. It should be one time for the equipment purchase.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. As amended, unit 2512, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 292. It's unit 5001, Aging Administration.
Goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, our motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 296, unit 5002, Senior Care.
Goes rec. Senior care. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 299, unit 5003, Nutritional Services.
Nutritional services goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 305, unit 5005, Senior Volunteer Service Program.
Goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 307, unit 5007, Wyoming Senior Services Board.
Goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 311, unit 5010, Healthcare Licensing and Surveys.
Goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 316, unit 5040, Pioneer Home.
Pioneer Home goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 321, unit 5050, Veterans Home.
Veterans Home goes rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 326, unit 5060, Retirement Center.
Goes rec. Retirement Center. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration was missed. It appears on page 302, unit 5004, Title 7, Elder Rights.
Elder rights. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other,
Mr. Chairman,
please?
this is a policy question I think I have in regards to Title 25 found on page 249. This is Division 2500, 2500. Do we want to fund this with general funds or do we want this to be funded with reversions? Yes, page 249, priority number 36 regarding Title 25. I'll repeat myself. It's a policy question regarding how we fund Title 25. So it's on page 249 of the agency's budget book. It's their priority number 36. They requested 7 million in general funds. The governor recommended approval of 3 million in general funds. And then I think is suggesting we use reversions to shore up the rest.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
that's a great catch. And in talking with the governor's office and the director, that gets them through this year. They'll look and evaluate where they're at on reversions, everything, and true it up in the supplemental budget. Way to go.
Okay. Anything else, Don?
One more item, and it also relates to the overall reversions. You have a footnote in the existing budget that says the first $39 million of reversions from the 23-24 budget shall be deposited into the state hospital demolition account, 39 million. The governor's request, including the one you just spoke of regarding Title 25, requests use of those same dollars. which takes priority? Should the dollars first go to operations before they go to the demo account, vice versa?
Mr. Chairman, there are two things we'd like to do on that. The first 15 million will go to the demolition account, and then after that, Department of Health would have access to them as we get that funded. And then, Dawn, I'd also like to have in there that we take those reversions from, is it 21, 22, that have not reverted and direct them to the demolition account as well.
So that has to do with our,
State hospital, old state
with
hospital.
the footnote though, right? So we can address those when we go through the footnotes,
Mhm.
but that's.
Right.
Okay,
Yes, is that a consensus of the,
so everyone, well, we'll go into more detail at the footnotes, but what, in terms of this budget?
oh,
Right, so, because we set the priorities then.
It doesn't make sense. Let's talk about that more.
So we have that footnote that directs the first 39 million. So, and we're going to work through these informally when we adjourn. And so what, we'll make the motion on the footnote that the first 15 million of reversions go to demolition, and then after that, they'll take over any reversions that we have in this particular budget.
Madam Chairman, we can flop that. We can do the first 5, then second 5. We can do it a variety of ways. I'll find out. The agency has a fair estimate of what those reversions would be, and I need to get that and share them with you.
All right.
Okay. Anything else on this budget? Okay, as amended. Department of Health, 48. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. That was the big one, folks.
the next
Ron?
agency for the committee's consideration is 49, Department of Family Services. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 23, Unit 5701, Utilities, Assistance, and Weatherization.
Okay, we'll let everyone kind of catch up with their books. So 21. That was right. Any amendments? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for the committee's consideration is on page 31, Unit 5801, Boys School, Warland.
That was rec on the boys' school. Representative
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on page 27. There's a request for 36,327, and the funding source is listed as 5005, and I'm just not familiar with what that is. What is that funding source?
I also see a correction needed on that page.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's education. I
I'm sorry,
believe it's education funding.
Yeah, yeah.
is SFB? Okay.
That's
Okay.
Department of Education for the education component of these kids. Yeah.
Right. Anything else on that? Don?
Mr. Chairman, just to prod, there was some discussion by the committee, basically dating back to the interim, both relative to the boys' school and the girls' school, whether or not funds should be shifted to other than the general fund. And this would be the place to do so if you so desired.
So do we have a motion? To go to.
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to move such funds as may be shifted to the school foundation program.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, second.
Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. The agency staff has made that estimate, and it's $2.3 million for this division, the two institutions.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Moved and seconded.
Yep.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other actions on 5 5801? If not, as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. So I've got a correction also on priority 17, page 27. No, that's what we just did. Okay, go ahead, Don.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 39, unit 5802, Girls School, Sheridan.
Do we have this same issue?
Mr. Chairman, I understood Representative Stiff's motion to cover both institutions.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Gov's right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That motion carried.
Mr. Chair.
As amended.
For the committee's consideration, there's a request for one new overnight dorm staff on page 34, continues on page 35. I would like us to approve the agency's request.
So there's a motion on page 35 to deny the governor's denial.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Second. Move seconded. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to encourage a no vote on this amendment, and the main reason is the agency testified that they would be handling this need by reclassifying a different position to allow for this issue to be resolved.
That's
And
my
so the
note.
need for a new position is unnecessary.
That's my notes as well, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed? No? No, that motion fails. We'll then move to close 5802. All those in favor say, as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 53, unit 5903, community crisis beds.
Crisis beds, Gov's rec. Oh, where are my notes?
I apologize, I jumped ahead.
Yeah,
The next one is on page 50, unit 5901, administration and support.
5901, Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I believe there was interest in an amendment, possible amendment here for the Lander building.
Whose was it, mine? Somebody else's?
For clarification, I believe it relates to furnishings.
Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Is this where we want that in your? What unit? Mr. Chairman, I just want, are we in the right place? Because I thought we were doing that in,
Not this one, my apologies. 5915 is where we should do that motion.
so we'll wait till
Not
59.
quite.
Just about. Ooh.
Okay, please proceed. I think we've already acted.
I believe the vote is pending on 5901.
5901, Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 53, unit 5903, community crisis beds.
Gov's rec.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would like to adopt the agency's requested rate increase for crisis stabilization services.
Moving seconded, discussion.
Mr. Chairman, so what's the fiscal impact of that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at page 52 in the agency's budget book. And they requested 3.7. For 100% coverage. The governor only approved 75% of that.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
In the agency had the rebasing that took place over the last year. The crisis beds, group homes, PRTFs, BOCES all went through a reformulation and rebasing. And the governor come back on each of the requests and funded each of them at 75%.
So if we do this one, we got to do all of them.
I'd encourage a no.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. Okay, with show of hands, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That motion fails. Nice try. Next. So the motion is on
5903.
5903. And that's Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 61, unit 5904, Protective Services and Juvenile Justice.
5904, Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, there was $100,000 appropriation that tied in. Madam Chairman might recall this to House Bill 37, which was the juvenile justice system, transferring the juvenile justice system to DFS. And in that, they provided an ongoing $100,000 funding that didn't get put in. And so I would add $100,000 into object code 0292.
And that.
Second.
Move second for discussion. Don, does this ring a bell?
Mr. Chairman, it does. I believe this will require a footnote because they'll need some direction as to how to accommodate the increase. And it would be a $100,000 increase to the general fund to accomplish the purposes of House Bill 37.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't think we had any direction in the bill. It just provided for the $100,000 as I recall reading that. So we'd need some direction from the agency or.
Well, the money had a specific purpose and it needs to stick with that purpose. And then once it's there, it'll become in their standard budget, I presume. So could, with the footnote, is that a friendly amendment?
Is.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Any other action in 4904? 5904. As amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 67, unit 5908, the Wyoming Children's Trust Fund.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
You'll recall that we had Director Schmidt and the Children's Trust Fund Executive Director here. They had requested a new position based on HDR's assignment, and I think there was one at an 010 and they funded it an 05. This is a reduction of that amount commensurate with what HDR's recommendation was. And so it's a reduction of $16,389.
That's a motion?
It is.
Seconded by. Okay, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So the motion is to reduce by 16,000 and change, is that right?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
Are we reducing the 44,404?
Right. I may have mistranscribed my notes, but I had a reduction that was slightly lower.
The 44,000, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. The $44,404 would be reduced down to $28,015.
Right,
There we
which
go.
is a reduction of
Everyone,
14,000.
motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. As amended, unit 5908, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 73, unit 5910, Food Security.
Those rec, food security, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 79, unit 5911, Child Support.
Child support, Gov's rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 85, unit 5912, Childcare.
Gov's rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, also take one vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'd like to back up slightly And Mr. Chairman, I would reduce the general fund amount in unit 5912 by 1.3 million and change. This is based on priority number 11, early childhood integrated data system. And if I get a second, I'll explain.
Second, so this is part of the SLED program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This funding would then be appropriated a similar amount or same like amount in the Community College Commission for the sleds to integrate this project at that point and in that location.
Does everyone understand the motion? Is there a second first? Okay, so you wanted to, I think where there's some confusion. Go ahead. Can you explain what we're doing,
Mr. Chairman,
please?
there was a grant awarded for e-kids to be and when they received that grant, it couldn't be done by the entity that was going to do the data search or whoever. So they needed to, that grant had to come to a state agency. The governor's office asked that it be put in the Department of Family Services just as a pass-through. And then they had a 501c3 that administered, I can't align, I forget who it was. And then they engaged with an entity to research and get this preschool data. The governor's office has asked that the Department of Family Services fund this for another year because, or for this next biennium to finish getting the data that they had collected with general funds because the grant has expired. There's no more funding there. There is a fair conversation to be had. Should that happen in sleds or should it happen here? I would, in talking with them, both sides of that, I think the most important thing is that we get the information because it really provides that free school data that we've been looking for that we haven't had to this date.
So the governor's rec is to make it ongoing versus one time.
We could change that. I would recommend changing that. And I asked the administrators of that if this was intended to be ongoing, and my understanding is that was for this biennium.
So do we have an amendment? To make that one time, and then we're looking at page 82.
Yeah, but we're on Tom's.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, a reminder to the committee, the amendment that we're currently discussing is not, is to reduce this by the 1.3 million and change, and then put a like amount in the Community College Commission to do this exact same study, but do it within the SLEDS model that the Community College Commission already does, so that we can combine the data for the early childhood and these older kids together, and it creates a more comprehensive report by having those in the same system as opposed to trying to merge the systems after
Okay,
doing.
on that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Now let's go to the one-time versus continuing.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
just a note to staff to please remind us to put this amount back in the Community College Commission one time. In case my good colleague to my left forgets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that continuing appropriation is gone now for that action. So we don't have to take any more action. Just, okay, as amended, unit 5912, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 90, unit 5913, temporary assistance for needy families, TANF.
That was rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 103, unit 5915, local services.
Goes
I
right.
believe there is an amendment.
Okay,
There was prior discussion about potential furnishings.
furnishings. You're up. Furnishings.
5915, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would move to increase local services by $200,000 to be used for furnishings. We moved the Department of Family Services into a facility on the Life Resource Center campus, and they're going to the garage sales around town to furnish it. We had a little extra money left in the budget. Department of Construction elected to use that to replace the boiler. It was kind of end of life cycle and decided to use that there. So the other thing we've done in that building is there's a place where we can have agency hearings. And so we need the tables, chairs, televisions to accommodate that as well when we're in Lander.
How did you come up with a number?
I come up with the number through the Department of Construction, ask them what it would take to get that done.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Any other actions in unit 5915?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm still gonna throw it out for conversation here. Priority 9B on page 98. The agency is asking for a rate increase to group homes, residential treatment centers, and BOCES. This is based on a rate analysis. Various of our providers are in financial distress due to not having enough cash flow in these situations. So I would encourage the committee to adopt the agency's request and deny the governor's 75%. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
second, by the way, for discussion. I think that the good representative from Laramie is right. They are in distress under the current funding formula. The formula that's been adopted should relieve much of that. And most importantly, we were funding each of those entities in a like manner when they provide different services. And the rebasing adjusted that. And I think it's a fair argument. Do you fund it at the full 100%, or do you keep it consistent with the governor's rec, which would be my recommendation at the 75%?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just a question on this different entities providing different services, because in the narrative, it seems to say that their current rate for room and board services is $180 a day. If we approve additional money at the governor's recommendation, are you saying that some will get different daily reimbursement rates than others? And based on what?
Mr. Chairman, was really the most important part of what come out of the rebasing study, is that they looked at the providers and the services they provided and recalculated based on information that the providers give them to come up with the new funding model. There are some that particularly the BOCES see a pretty significant increase. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, I can't remember if it's the crisis beds or the group homes that stay just about the same.
And Mr. Chairman, just for discussion, it seemed like I was talking with one of the service providers and their actual cost, and this one was in Teton County, so that may explain some of the problem, that it was their actual costs were multiples of the current reimbursement rate. So I guess I'm on and for them.
They would have to be.
And Mr. Chairman, that was, so it hadn't been rebased since 2016-ish. And that was because in the 15-16 budget year, that was one of the cuts that Department of Family Service put up, is that the biennial rebasing. So they hadn't been rebased, and you're absolutely right, particularly the BOCES facilities up in the northwestern part of the state were impacted pretty tough.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I see this narrative says it's $180 a day, but I don't see what it says if we increase it by this, how much that's gonna be per day.
And Mr. Chairman and Senator Anderson, that's because the new rebasing it's not across the board increase from 180 to say 200. It depends on the service that the respective provider provides for the population served. That is rebased according to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other action on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed? No. Let's see our hands. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those opposed? That motion fails. So we're still in which unit?
5915 on page 103.
5915 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The last unit in this agency appears on page 110, unit 5916, tribes.
That's right. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Anything else in Department of Family Services? If not, as amended, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. So it's 4 o'clock roughly. Let's take a short break. And so just so the committee knows, we're probably going to quit at 5, or roughly at 5. If we get to the community colleges, we're going to skip it. I mean, that's a possibility, I think. Just because the Senator Kinski wants to be available when we have that discussion. So we'll just skip it and continue. Then when we close, however far we get, we're going to stop. We'll adjourn the meeting, but then we're going to sit as a group all together and walk through the footnotes so we all understand what those are to expedite our actions tomorrow. So everybody knows we will not get to UW today, regardless, just so everybody knows. And we'll skip that if we get that far. But that's kind of our schedule for the rest of the day.
Just a quick question. So we're going to skip community colleges, but we're going to try to get through tourism and stop just before UW. That's what we're shooting
Around
for.
there. We'll go as far as
Around
we
there.
can go, but we won't do UW and we won't do community colleges.
Okay. So I want to make sure.
Okay, well, it's going to take 10-minute break so everyone knows what we're doing. Yeah, 51. Okay, Don, go ahead.
Members of the committee, the first unit for Agency 51 Livestock Board appears on page 16, Unit 101, Administration.
Okay, is everyone getting their books out? Livestock Board. Page 16, Gov's Rec. Anything? Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 18, Unit 103, Information Technology.
Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 23, Unit 201, Animal Health.
Gov's Rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 27, Unit 0205, Law Enforcement. And during the agency discussion, there was a fair bit of conversation from the committee on priority number 7, which appears on page 25, as to the total amount for the law enforcement account and whether that should be ongoing or not.
That's my notes.
Okay.
My phone just died.
That was me.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, don't you, as I recall, we asked why they didn't request the 500 instead of just the 362. And this would bring it up to 500. Right? Is that the way I'm remembering? So.
And is there also a bill out there?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think the motion that I would have would be that the base budget should be 500,000, and then we have, we fill it to that. How does that need to be in there?
Mr. Chairman, you can do nothing. That's always, just approve the governor's rec. Another alternative would be to put in $500,000 each biennium. And a third option would be direction via a footnote in the 2017-2018 budget to bring it up to 500,000. So those are kind of 3 options for you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we currently have a balance of 137,000. The 362 doesn't bring us up to the 500,000. My motion, Mr. Chairman, would be to have the base budget amount or the standard budget request of 500,000 and fill it whatever less than 137 to that point.
So I also
Mr.
have some
Chairman.
notes on that motion, that there was a percentage to special revenues that are out there that help fund this. Or, so is there another source of income for this?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe for the account itself, for this unit, yes, but for the account itself, it appears to be 100% generally funded.
And
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead. Mr. Chairman, I would second the motion with the understanding what the motion is to increase the governor's recommendation so that the amount appropriated is $500,000, that it's ongoing, whatever in any given year is not used, just reverts. Any given biennium is not used, reverts.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that the correct condition of your motion?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to say, encourage a no vote on this motion. The statute already says the funding should revert. The narrative said there's 137,000 available. That's why the math works out to what it does. But they also stated during their testimony that they have 105 of that 137,000 obligated, which means it would be a different amount needed to get it to 500,000. I think a simpler and cleaner way would be to simply let whatever's remaining revert, and we start each biennium with a new 500,000. And that way we end up in the
Mr.
where
Chairman,
we should without a whole lot of gymnastics to get there.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that's what the motion is. I thought that what Representative Walter says is the motion.
What he said,
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is the current motion on the table is to allow whatever's remaining to stay in the account, and then some number would be used to get it to the 500,000 is the way I understood the motion.
Mr. Chairman, and that's right, and I would withdraw my motion, my amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
Let it revert. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we start the biennium with 500,000 in this account. And if I get a second, I'll continue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then with that, we don't have to take any action, but the statute will already make sure that the remaining amount will revert, and we start with this 500,000. And that's where I believe the committee that brought this really wants it to be. And so it's simple and clean.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming the 362 does bring it up to 500,000. I heard somebody say it doesn't, but maybe that's because they would only have 105 left after they spent some or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the ongoing doesn't make sense on the 362 because that's just an odd number and you don't know how much they've expended. So it's just and what we're doing is we're capping the funds, putting a base amount into it, and that's what they spend, and anything reverse, and then it fills back up everybody. And so it's kind of a reverse order at the right moment.
And Mr. Chairman, and I believe to respond to Senator Anderson's comment, the statute, as Representative Walter said, requires reversion of the funds every biennium. So whatever money's in the account on June 30th will revert. And then the motion is to replenish it with $500,000 for that coming biennium.
So everyone understand the motion?
Mr. Chairman, one quick clarification. I understand Representative Walter's motion to be 500,000 in the standard budget in perpetuity.
That is correct.
Okay, everyone understand it? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. As amended, then Unit 205. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 30, Unit 301, Lab Tech Brucellosis.
God's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 32, Unit 302, Brucellosis Travel.
God's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 35, Unit 303, Brucellosis Testing.
God's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next
So
unit,
I had a question here, whether it's one time and also the requirement to raise the fees. Do we have was there any discussion about that? Maybe it's just my notes. All right, please proceed.
the next unit for your consideration appears on page 38, Unit 440, Avian Health.
Those rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 40, Unit 442, Equine.
Those rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 43, Unit 601, Astrays.
Those rec on 601. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 53, Unit 701, Brand Inspection.
Those rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The last unit in this agency appears on page 56, Unit 801, Predator Control Fees.
Those rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Agency 51 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next agency in order is Agency 53, Workforce Services.
Okay, please proceed.
The first unit for your consideration appears on page 22, Unit 0101, Office of the Director.
Unit 0101, Gov's rec. Any amendments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 30, unit 110, policy research and communication.
That was rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion.
The next
Carries.
unit for your consideration appears on page 42, unit 0125, business training and support. I believe there is a technical or a policy question.
Go ahead. Explain. Bless you.
This came up during your discussion of the investment of the workers' comp funds and how they were intended to achieve a greater rate of return because they would be invested more aggressively in equities. And there is a policy question that was raised during the discussion of that draft LSO 376, whether or not, if it is enacted into law, this appropriation should be reduced by the increased investment earnings that would be generated by that legislation. So we reached out to the state treasurer's office and identified the differential in the investments as a result of that bill. And they concluded it was this an internal? $2,880,000. So the question is whether or not you wanted to accommodate any of that potential increase in investment earnings in this unit.
So the first issue would be they haven't really done it yet. So that increase in earnings is a forecast.
Absolutely.
And so in that regards, it's probably premature to do that. We need to know what we need to do is somehow earmark this so that when would these dollars begin to accrue, that then we can revisit this issue. That makes sense, Don?
We can do that.
Okay. Anything else in this unit? So it's Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on pages 47 and 48, unit 135, Wyoming Quality Homes.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 51, unit 140, Serve Wyoming.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 68, unit 150, Employment and Training.
Get to 61.
Yes, page 67 and 68, Employment and Training.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 81, unit 190, State Mine Inspector.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 86, unit 191, Mining Exams.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 111, unit 201, Vocational Rehabilitation.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 126, unit 301, Unemployment Insurance Administration.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 131, unit 340, Unemployment Insurance Employment Security Revenue Fund.
Revenue fund, Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carried.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 140. It's unit 401, Labor Standards.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 154, unit 501, Workers' Compensation and OSHA.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The last unit for your consideration appears on page 161, unit 601, Disability Determination Services.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Agency 53 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next agency for your consideration is Agency 55. This is the Oil and Gas Commission.
Okay, oil and gas. Agency 55. Go ahead, Don.
The first unit for your consideration appears on page 24. It's Unit 101, Administration.
Okay, we're on administration. Page 24. Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? I'm letting everyone catch up with their books. Hold on one second. 24? We're on Gov's recs. Any? Yeah, true story. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 29 and 30, Unit 105, the
Gov's rec.
UIC program.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The last unit for this agency appears on page 35. It's Unit 202, Oil and Gas Bond Forfeitures.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That motion carries. Agency 55, all those in favor? Motion to close. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
Per the chairman's direction, Agency 57 is being skipped. The next agency for your consideration is Agency 60, State Lands and Investments.
Okay, everyone pull out number 60. If it surprised people, I'll just do it. Okay, Don?
The first unit for your consideration in this agency appears on page 29. It's Unit 101, Administration and Support.
Okay.
Page 29, Unit 101, Administration and Support.
Has everyone got it? Everyone through their notes? Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 50. It's Unit 102, Trust Land Management. And I believe there is a potential amendment. This is not a technical correction. This is a potential amendment by a member. Page 50. This is unit of trust land management, and to spur any interest in this area, there was a discussion of increasing the amount related to the request on page 48.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
while whoever wanted that is thinking about it, I have a motion in this unit, but it's on page 39.
Okay, let's go there.
And the motion would be to reduce the request by 24,413. And it relates to a reclassification. It's exception request priority number 2,
We
reclassification.
have a second for discussion. Can you explain your request?
Sure. We've spent a lot of time talking about employee compensation. We've gone through it very methodically. We put a lot of money into employee raises. This reclassification seems to relate to taking the existing members inside OSLI, dividing them up into 2 teams, I guess, and saying one person, you're the leader of this team, and one person, you're the leader of that team. To me, it's just not clear that what the person does when they come to work each day has really changed. And so, it's not a lot of money, but I would recommend denial of this reclassification.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, go ahead.
I'm going to speak against this, and really it's not because I am against the concept. It's because if they reorganize and somebody goes from being an employee to being now that employee being a manager, the HRD rules requires that reclassification, which moves them to a different pay table or pay level, which is why there is a need to increase this. Their duties will change only slightly probably, but I think the one thing is these individuals will now be managing people in addition to doing the job duties they have today. And unfortunately, our HRD rules force us into these corners where we have to pay based on the duties that they are performing. And I think this is a situation where under this new structure within the agency, these will be duties that they will be performing at this point. And the state will be required to pay those expenses. So again, I would encourage a no vote on the amendment.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would only say that we create a span of control issue if you've not got a lot of people that you're supervising. So 104.
So, yeah, I think I'll be a no vote for, and mine's more of a general statement. And that is that OSLI has kind of been overworked and underpaid for the work that they do for a while. And frankly, they've been understaffed. And it's amazing how much we asked them to do and have particularly asked them to do in the last 3 years. So I just don't think that the idea and the concept of what they're doing and re-educating and aligning their business model to be more effective and more constructive in the numerous tasks that we provide to them is unrealistic. So on against the motion. Okay, any other discussion on it? All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed, say aye. No, no. Can I see the hands on the ayes? 1, 2, 3, 4 noes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That motion fails. Any other motions? So Don, help us out on who asked for what. If it was me, let me know.
I believe there was just an interest in increasing the exception request on page 48, which is currently at $340,000 up to $750,000. Maybe there's no interest in doing that.
What page is that?
48.
48.
Well, this is the scale. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think over the last biennium, we brought that up to 750, I believe. And that's kind of their emergency. When they find something that is out of whack, and I would bring that up to the fully funded at 750.
So I don't see the fund balance, and I don't see what did we do last year? Is that description accurate?
Mr. Chairman, as you can maybe best see on page 50, the school foundation program did have a larger base budget than it does now. It had $690,000 as opposed to the 314. So under that percentage, I think it's reasonable to conclude that it was closer to that 750,000. And you can also see that on page 49 in object code 903. It indeed, Representative Larson is correct. It was 750.
So this is SFB funds to bring it up to 750.
It is 92% SFP, 8% general fund.
Yeah.
And so you bring it proportionately, or
Yeah, percentage.
everyone understand? So what are the funds used for? And how did they get expended down? So we understand what we're funding. We're all getting a little rummy, so I think we just got to take our time and know what we're doing. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me, if this is the way we want to go by increasing hiring consultants to do it, then then that's fine. but I'm going to make a motion then to cut the commercial position that's back a couple pages back. Either we're going to do one or the other. I think doing both is not prudent at this time, given, I understand what the good co-chair said about the agency being overworked and underpaid.
Mr. Chairman,
But
I've got to plead stupid again. The 750, I'm looking for, there's a 750 in emergency funds that we have later in the book. When we said 750, my ears perked up and said, oh, that's what the one I'm looking for. Do you? I don't think so. So when, back in that part where we talked about Tin Can Alley, remember that conversation? Up in your neck of the woods in Cali, when they restored that Tin Can Alley and stuff, they used those emergency funds, and they've made a request in there that's what I was wanting to bring up to 750,000. I respectfully would withdraw my motion if Representative Walters has something he wants to do that I just, it's been a long day.
Most was withdrawn, because this is not for that. All right, Don, anything else on unit 101, 102?
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make the motion to bring this section up to 750, and this is really, if I get a second, I'll explain why.
Second.
And this is funds, they aren't used for consultants. This is for funds to go out and improve, for projects to improve state lands. And it's the state lands that fund our school system. And so it is things like making sure the forests are healthy, the roads are in good shape, not causing excessive erosion, various things like that, that is, this funding is used for those kind of projects, a whole variety of them. So I think it is good to have an adequate amount of money to make sure we maintain our state lands in a good, safe, healthy manner.
So, go ahead.
maybe I'm looking at the wrong, maybe you're getting rummy. I'm looking at page 48 and the 340,907. That's what we're talking about here, correct? Thanks, so. Because when I read it, it says in an effort to diversify income generating uses, the state lands create consistent revenue distributors, blah, blah, blah. It says the office has recognized the need to contract or partner with consulting and development firms. Further, the office recognizes, so this isn't about contracting for a healthy forest or healthy, this is to hire a firm to flesh out new opportunities, which if you go back to the hiring a new person in the commercial leasing phone is exactly what they say that's going to do. So that's where my point is. If we pass this, then I'm going to make a motion to cut out the employee. That's fine. But just
before you jump off the boat, there's A and B under this priority. If you go back and look at A, that's state land preservation and enhancement. So
on the page before. Sorry.
So what they've done is they kind of stack two things into one billet, which makes it confusing.
Okay.
But so then, on the motion, are you directing where those funds are going to go? Because you'll need to direct the use of those funds. And if we're going to use school foundation dollars, those dollars ought to be spent on school foundation properties. Would that be fair, Don?
Mr. Chairman, I believe of the state's land asset, 92% of the lands are schools.
Or school
That's
sections.
why-
Okay,
That's where.
So,
Mr. Chairman, could we
and we're going from what to what?
restate the motion?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is to increase the 340,907 to a total of $750,000. Split 92% school foundation, 8% general fund for these purposes. Again, this is to preserve and enhance the value of the state lands in the state of Wyoming for today and for future beneficiaries. And I think it's a good use of funds to maintain these lands.
So, and now I'm looking at the description of this is essentially a personnel category for state personnel. And it's not, I don't see that the purpose within this fund is actually to expend dollars for operations on the land. So I'm not just wondering if this is the right place to do this.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might, the unit does have a lot of personnel and operation expenses. This would entirely be on line 903, which is contract services and special projects, which could mean the whole host of forest health issues, rangeland health issues. It speaks to building fence, environmental health and safety, capital improvements, as well as the last paragraph regarding new or enhanced income producing opportunities.
So, committee, I'll oppose this motion because it's kind of a last minute injecting it and reshuffling dollars that we didn't know what, and wasn't asked for. And we don't know what the need is. And I just oppose the motion.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, they did indicate that they've used it. And they've used it last couple of times on the 750, but to that point, they didn't request it. You're right.
Further discussion on the motion? And all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no? No, that motion fails. Okay, we're back on the unit 102. There have been no amendments, is that correct? So as it does rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 63, unit 103, Clean Water Revolving Fund.
Does rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Next unit for your consideration appears on page 71 and 72, unit 104, Government Grants and Loans.
Does rec, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 79, unit 105, Field Services.
Does rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 91, unit 131, Drinking Water Revolving Fund.
Page 91, is everybody there? Good. Does rec, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 95, unit 166, Forest Service MOU.
MOUs for forest. Does rec, all those in favor say aye. Go ahead.
As I read that, so it sounds like we only have one MOU and it's with the Medicine Bow Forest. I just wonder why we don't have any with the others. Does anybody recall any of that conversation? We've got five, I think, 5 regions, 5 national forests. Okay, never mind. Just wondering if anybody, if I missed something.
Well, and do we need a new employee to do one MOU? Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, I may be wrong, but there was a point in time in my past life at Whiteout where we needed to facilitate the arrangement with the Forest Service in particular areas. I believe this may be this one or something like it.
Chairman,
Please.
reading some of the narrative, they discuss a capital city coordinator. I wonder if this didn't come about as some water sources that are in the Medicine Bow Route National Forest were beginning to be brought into the capital city. And they needed some sort of a MOU to make sure that that would continue to happen well into the future.
Mhm.
Okay. We have a motion.
No, just,
Does rec?
yep,
All those in favor say aye.
I,
Those opposed, no? The motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 104, unit 201, Forestry Division.
Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Those opposed, the motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 110, unit 301, Emergency Fire Suppression Account.
Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
I,
All those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 118, unit 401, Fire.
Does rec? 118. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 124, unit 501, Forest Performance Account.
Does rec? All those in favor say aye.
I,
All those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 129, unit 601, Ranch A.
That was right. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so I'd like to, would like to include Ranch A in our major maintenance funding. I don't know if this is the place to put it, a footnote or something to do that, but we need to, their task with taking care of any maintenance things with the revenue that the facility generates, which is pretty meager. And I don't know where to do that at. No.
Moved and seconded for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there is a statute on this as well, that the major maintenance will come from this account. Ideally, the structure would change via a change in statute.
So what we could do though is,
For one time.
we could, well, one time, but what we could say to the, because the statute is, doesn't say all major maintenance. It just says major maintenance shall be funded. So what we need is to have an evaluation on what the full major maintenance is. And if it is deficient, then we can fund it. So I think if we make that request to OSLI, then we can incorporate that into it.
But
That's my understanding of the statute.
what's the vehicle that we do it? Do we do it in this budget or do we do it in the section 300?
Let me give you options. You could add additional general funds to this budget and specify the purposes for them, either for actual major maintenance work or for a review by OSLI. An alternative would be within section 308, which is the major maintenance statute. You could carve out a portion of the appropriation there and specify that in addition to the amounts appropriated from the Ranch A account, there are additional funds appropriated by general funds, which shall be dedicated to, or may be dedicated to Ranch A. So those are some options.
So I think what we need is if OSLI is listening, it looks like we put a certain amount of funds in there and we need to know what the revenues are and what their major maintenance obligations are. So
Sure. I'd make a motion to increase the Ranch A budget by $100,000 dedicated for major maintenance. That lets them get working on some stuff till we get some things figured out.
Second.
go ahead, Tom.
And the source of funds is general funds.
It is.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Division 601 is amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, that motion carries. And so could we put the footnote in there to have them also report on this back to us? Okay, go ahead.
The next unit for your
Emergencies.
consideration appears on page 131, unit 901, cities, towns, counties, capital construction.
Page number again?
131.
That was rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 137, unit 902, capital construction appropriation, mineral impact. And just to refresh the committee's recollection of the hearing with this agency, this is the maximum amount possible of revenue, including $24.2 million of COLIS bonus payments, which have not been received in the past 6 years, or new money have not been received in the past 6 years. In addition, out of the remainder, recall Governor's Letter 5 provides for $4 million of this same account going to the BRC program.
So refresh our memories then, how much money is actually there?
So there's about $22 million available in new revenue, of which $4 million will be directed to the BRC program, leaving about $18 million for MRG. And the reason I stress this is we've received a number of phone calls from municipalities and legislators about, is this 47 million going to be available on July 1?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so Donna, how do we fix this?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, Representative, it technically does not need fixed. How, we have appropriated COLA's bonus money, whether or not it arrives for quite some time. JAC has elected to fix the other recipients of those funds. So the community colleges have been, that line has been taken out. And in this case, if you so desired, you could reduce this by $24,169,592, just for transparency purposes.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Don, in their narrative, they talk about this being in existence since 1977 and was really developed to help mitigate the impact of mineral development. Did we have impact aid in 1977?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know.
Well, and the reason I ask that, Mr. Chairman, is it seems that we've added additional resources. I think impact aid come later, and we've added additional resources to help mitigate the impacts of mineral development to communities. Now, this MRG program has also been expanded to address non-mineral emergencies. I just,
So Don, I would suggest that we put this on interim topics so we can do a hardcore review of this and NMR current funding process. It just needs to be looked at. Things we can't solve today. Okay. 902 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Members of the committee, the next unit for your consideration is on page 143, unit 201, federal forestry grants.
Gov's right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 148, unit 5001, county equipment.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 155, unit 5002, fire.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on pages 161 and 162, unit 6001, good neighbor authority.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 163, unit 6002, state good neighbor authority funds.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Next unit for your
Mr.
consideration.
Chairman.
I was waiting.
Yeah. I have a similar question since on page 163, we're going from a base budget of a certain amount to a new budget of 0. Any explanation of whether it's a real reduction in funds or whether that's from someplace else, just being funded from some other source?
Kevin, any help?
Mr. Chairman, this does not have a standard.
Mr. Chairman, and my question was just why did it go from the base budget of 400,000 to 0 of what we just approved? And I guess it was
It's
just
one time zero.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. You appropriated one-time funding. We did not, when you do one time, we show it in the base budget as your last action in the legislature so we can have these conversations. You did not instruct us to make that a standard budget.
Okay. Please proceed.
Just one point of clarification, Representative Stith, this applied to footnote 3 in last year's budget if you wanted more background. The next unit for your consideration appears on page 164. This is the same issue, by the way, unit 6003, Black Hills Industry Study. Once again, it was a one-time appropriation in last year's budget.
Okay. So do we need to take action on those? Gov's rec on 6002. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Gov's rec on 6003. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion carries.
The next unit for your consideration appears on page 169, unit 6801, Transportation Enterprise Fund.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
The last unit for your consideration in this agency appears on page 175, unit 99-1, Farm Loan Reserve.
Gov's rec. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed.
Aye.
Agency 60 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. We're going to adjourn for the evening. And then we'll come back informally and kind of work through our, find the big fat thing on footnotes. We're going to have Dawn walk us through and run through them. So that'll save us about a half hour, an hour tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman,
And we don't have to think too much while we're doing it.
Mr. Chairman. Before we adjourn, thank you, Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, what our schedule may look like tomorrow, just.
Yeah, Dawn, before we adjourn, why don't you walk through our schedule for tomorrow?
Mr. Chairman, subject to direction from the chairs, I anticipate that you will take up additional agencies, including
Community
57,
college.
which you skipped over, probably for the first 2.5 hours or so. Then the University of Wyoming has been called back to discuss mineral matching grant activities, particularly in the research area of oil and gas. Following them will be a presentation, about 30 minutes, by the Stablecoin Commission. After lunch, the Executive Office of the Governor will be presenting their proposal for ARPA funds.
I think you skipped one quick review of the Arboretum, though.
I did. That also is actually, I think that's scheduled instead of UW. It's scheduled at 10:30, the Arboretum bill, then stablecoin, then lunch, then the ARPA presentation by the governor's office, then UW at 2 p.m. And then either markup of agencies or ARPA funds.
Yeah, and we probably, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, tomorrow is probably going to be a longer day. So we'll start right on time and anticipate going a little after 5 likely in order to accomplish everything we need to accomplish tomorrow. So just be prepared to.
So today is just a warm-up. Okay, anything else other than that? Okay, then we'll stand in recess or adjourn until tomorrow to 8 a.m. So we'll take a quick little 5-minute break while we